Hey everyone, it's Kenji. I'm here in my backyard. I'm with my buddy Barney, who is the maker of Con knives, and I'm going to show you how to sharpen a hard knife today. So, sharpening your knife with a whetstone, I think is the best way to sharpen a knife. You know, you can buy manual sharpeners or electric sharpeners. I find that they don't give you the level of control, and often they take too much material off the knife, so you're going to end up wind up grinding your blade down much faster than you want to. A good knife, you know, should last you, well, hopefully a lifetime. It depends how often you use it, of course. But using stones, I think, is the best way to control exactly how much you're grinding off, and also I think a good way to become more intimate with your knife.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, an important thing. Oh, where did that stone fix it? Here we go. All right, so Barney, can you first of all tell me about so this is it's a hard steel, right?
Yeah, so the high carbon steels are they're gonna hold an edge for a long time, but they are a little bit more finicky. Like you're gonna have to take a little bit better care of them. You can't just throw this in the dishwasher or something. But also, like you said, like I would not feed that to an electric sharpener because it's
Right.
going to just tear off extra metal.
So a standard Western, a European style knife is usually made from a slightly softer steel. And with a softer steel, they're generally sort of a little bit easier to sharpen. You can also hone them on a honing rod to keep their edge going longer, but they're also going to lose their edge a little bit faster. Whereas Japanese style knives, or this is sort of a hybrid knife, which is a Western shape with Japanese style materials.
Steel, yeah.
With Japanese steel, those knives are harder, so they can actually take a better edge, and they will hold that edge longer, but they're a little bit more tricky to sharpen properly. So stones come in different grits. These are all water stones, which means that you need to soak them in water before using them for lubrication. They come in different grits. This one is 300, and this is what I would use if my knife was in really bad shape and I really need to start to grind a new edge down on it. I probably would never use this with a hard steel knife like this. I would use this on my Western knives. Instead, I'm going to start with this, which is 800. And the higher the number, the finer the grit. This is 800, 1200, 2000, and then 6000. I'll probably start with 800 just to show you, and then from there we can move on up. When you're working with your knife, you always want to keep your stone well lubricated. So I find that getting a tray like this, putting a towel in it, and the stone down, I find is the best way to do it. And then the other thing you're going to need is this thing, which is a stone fixer. And what this does is it ensures that the top surface of the stone is nice and flat, because if there's any sort of divots or dimples, it's going to make it more difficult to evenly sharpen your knife. So you basically just, before you start sharpening, flatten out your stone like that. And you'll find that it also, what it does is it creates this sort of slurry of ground particles. And that's actually what is going to be sharpening your knife. You don't want to wash that off. You can just leave it. So this knife, are these single or double bevel knives?
Double bevel.
Double bevel. So, so the bevel on a knife is basically the way the blade comes together. So on a double bevel knife, both sides are ground down to the same angle and come to a single tapered point in the middle. On a single bevel knife, usually it's around 90% ground on one side and 10% on the other side. So on a double bevel knife,
and this is 15 degrees, just to let you know.
Oh, right. So, so the angle of a knife, so the angle of the bevel on a Western knife, it's usually around 20 degrees. Yeah. On a Japanese style knife, it's usually around 15 degrees, sometimes 17 degrees. The easiest way to set the angle of your knife, first of all, you can buy little things that will give you an angle, but I find the easiest way is to just use some basic trigonometry. So, if your knife, you can measure this distance in your knife, or you can just use your eye and approximate it. If you take that distance, the width of your knife, and then divide it by 4 and lift up the back of the knife by that amount, then you're basically at around 15 degrees. If you do the same thing and divide it by 3, so that you're at a slightly higher angle, you're at around 20 degrees. It's okay if you eyeball it, and the more experience you get at this, the better you get at sort of eyeballing those angles. But if you really want to be precise about it, you can do that math. I'm just going to eyeball it. So I'm going at around 15 degrees right now. And the way I sharpen my knives, everybody has a slightly different method, but the way I do it is that I start at one end of the stone. The idea is I want to use the full length of the stone and go across the full length of the blade. So I start with the heel at the top of the stone like this, and I pull it slowly backwards trying to make sure that I maintain that angle the whole time. Actually, let me move this a little bit closer over here. So I use one hand on the blade to apply pressure. Sorry, one hand on the handle to apply pressure, and then the other on the blade to keep that even.
And it really doesn't need a lot of pressure.
No, not a lot of pressure.
And if you want to start on like a crummy knife at first because you're worried about, you know, mangling up the sides of your knife, like go ahead. But at the same time, just know that like a well-loved knife is gonna show it a little bit. You're gonna get scratches eventually. It just shows the love that you've gone on and used this knife a lot. At the same time, like this, you know, you said you can eyeball it. You can also, there's a little bit of a feeling once you've gotten some practice. There's some feeling that you get to it that it'll start to be comfortable. But
yeah,
honestly, the first time I sharpened a knife on a whetstone, I got so frustrated because it didn't get any sharper. It probably got duller. and then as I got more practice, you know, it felt more comfortable. I could feel the burr. I could get, anyway, to where now I can get a razor sharp edge, and it's a lot quicker too.
So you see what and you can see that sort of that silty liquid kind of pooling up on the knife. That's fine. That should be there. Actually. And you should always make sure that your knife, as always, stays nice and moist. Your stone stays moist. Now what I'm doing is when I pull the knife, I apply a little bit more pressure than when I push it, because what I don't want to accidentally happen is for the knife to kind of dig into the stone, because that can chip your stone and it can also chip your knife. So when I'm pushing forward, I'm applying very, very light pressure, and a little bit more when I'm pulling back. And what I do is I start on one side, and I do about 16 to 20 strokes on that one side. Then I flip it over, do about 16 to 20 strokes on that second side. And then each time I flip it back over again, I do fewer and fewer strokes. So I'll start with 16, then I'll do 8, then I'll do 4, 2, and then eventually I'll just be doing back and forth 1, 1, and 1. And that's basically just to ensure that you're kind of grinding down the blade evenly, and you're not taking too much material off one side or causing that, you know, the edge, the very tip of the knife to roll over on itself or anything like that.
Now you've got a lot of knives. How often do you sharpen your knife?
If anyone's seen, I mean, you've all seen my knife drawer if you watch this channel. I have a lot of knives. It's sort of I like to collect knives. So, you know, the way I do it is like I'll use one knife until it gets dull to the point where it's annoying. Yeah. Then I'll switch to another knife, and I'll do that until I go through like my top 5 to 10 favorite knives, and then I'll just sharpen them all at once. So I end up sharpening my knives, you know, maybe a couple times a year, max, but just because I have so many. Well, you know, when I was working,
use it a lot too. I mean,
yeah.
You're
and you know, and with a hard steel knife, I can't remember the last time I sharpened this one. Oh, maybe we should have showed how sharp it was before we started. Oh well. I can't remember the last time I sharpened this one, but it must be. I mean, it's been a long time, and it's still, you know, with a really hard steel knife, it's going to hold that edge for a long time. It's, you know, as long as you don't abuse it. Always cut on a cutting board.
Don't cut through bones with it. Don't cut through frozen foods with it.
Yes.
And don't cut on glass.
So that's the basic process. I'm not sure there's too much more to show other than that. You know, I would do the same thing. Right now, this is the 800 grit stone, and you want to work towards a finer and finer grit. So from here, I might, you know, I probably wouldn't do 800, 1200, 2000, 6000. I would probably just do something like 8000 to 2000, and I might even just finish with the 2000. You know, 6000 or 8000 grit is really, I would use that on my yanagi, on my sashimi knife, if I want to get like a real sort of mirror, polished mirror finish.
Most people, I'd say, could do a lot of their work on 1000 grit stone. You could finish on 2000 or something. I don't have stones yet. I'm gonna be making them, but the essential ones are hovering around below and above 1000 or so.
Yeah, I mean this is 800, and you know, I can feel it. It's already sharp. Even at 800, you're gonna get a very sharp edge on it. And
it is more. It's probably less about the stone, more about practice to get the right kind of technique, and then once you're comfortable, like. It really doesn't take long, just soaking the stone first, and then you can put an awesome edge on it. So these stones, they're made by a company called King. All of my stones are from King. It's just a company I've actually, other than this one, which I bought in Japan, but they're all, you know, King is a good company. You can find them
online retailers. You can find them at any knife shop. They're a good, solid company. They also make double-sided stones. I find that it's better to buy a single grit stone because they're usually larger. And some of those double-sided, inexpensive stones, I mean, even these are only like 30, 40 bucks a piece. But the, you know, the double-sided, really cheap ones that are small, you know, the smaller the stone, the harder it's going to be to get an even grind on your knife. The last thing to know about hard steel knives is that you don't want to use a honing rod on them. So with a Western knife, what can happen is that the metal is soft, so the edge can kind of roll over on itself a little bit. And a honing rod, you've seen chefs do that. You know, they go like you have the steel and you knock it back and knock the knife back and forth on it. What that does is it sort of realigns the edge of the blade. With a very hard steel knife, it can actually sort of crack or chip the blade. So
I mean, I tell people if they're set on using a honing rod with one of my knives, then it's like, just don't put any pressure on it, you know, because you really could do some damage to your knife more than it's going to help you. But yeah,
what I would actually recommend is if you're on a hard steel knife, is a strop. So this is something like this. You can find them like the kind the barbers do with their the leather strap that people use. This is just a block with a piece of leather attached to it, and it comes with this sort of green putty, and you basically just rub it on here. And then the exact same thing that you do the exact same thing that you do with the stone. You just keep that same 15-degree angle.
With one exception, you don't want to cut. You don't want to go. Forward
Don't push.
Only pulling.
Yeah, only pulling on a strap
because you don't want to cut into your leather.
Exactly. So you just pulling away from the pulling the knife instead of pushing into the blade, and that's going to give you that sort of final alignment. And this is something that, you know, if you feel like your knife is starting to lose a little bit of its cutting power, this should, you know, this will do up until the point where it really starts to get dull. A strap is going to suffice and help the knife retain that recapture that edge that it had.
And speaking of dull, like there is an adage that says a dull knife is dangerous, sharp is safe, because you're not going to have to force your knife to do what it's supposed to do. And that's
exactly,
like, that's why I want to introduce sharp and good knives to people, is because like it's so much more fun to use a sharp knife first.
It is,
but it's also actually safer. And you have to know that it's going to be sharp, but like once you can sharpen it with the stone.
I don't know what we can cut here. Here, let me pull a green tomato off my.
Oh yeah, I actually brought a bag of produce and.
Oh, you did?
Oh
yeah. Let's cut something and see. Let's see how sharp.
Just stopped and got like. So it's not.
So this is like a knife that I've probably used for at least half a year without sharpening. I just sort of resharpened it on an 800 stone, and we can see how sharp that is, and then maybe we can test it against one of your brand new. Let me see how thin I can get this.
They actually have competitions of how sharp you can get your knife.
Yeah, pretty sharp. You can get it, you know, thin enough that you can see through the tomato. Can we try out that the brand new one here?
Yeah.
This is the new version of the knife.
I didn't even check the blade on that, so maybe we'll strop it if you need it. How's that feel?
Also quite sharp. Yeah. So a good knife, you should be able to get paper thin tomato slices like that. My daughter just got a microscope, so I'll have her look at some tomato cells this evening.
Always
all right.
Scientist.
That's about it. Yeah, when your knives, don't store them loose in a drawer. I have a knife block that fits inside my drawer. Or at the very least, you should have an edge guard, like a plastic sleeve or a leather sleeve that you stick on the knife so that it doesn't lose its edge banging around in a drawer. Yeah. All right. So that is how you sharpen a knife. Thank you, Barney, for being here and for showing me your cool new knives. And yeah. All right, guys, gals, non-binary pals, I will see you next time. Bye.